Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Jai Om Vishnuvam Jalavilar Pitar Savadeva Sadhusishima A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnuvam Jalavilar Pitar Savadeva Sadhusishima Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Go Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam Chapter 6
Yashodhanana Ajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Javalabha Girivardhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Avijjakacharya Stotara Sata Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Skam BBT Founder Acharya His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Prem Chida Ho Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Hare Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Shri 50th anniversary of Radha Gopinath installation Ki. Oh, glory is the symbol of devotees. Oh, glory is the symbol of devotees. Oh, glory is the Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Gaur Premananda. Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on some of the schedules it was written that Ramai Maharaj was going to be giving this class, but he asked if I could do it, so my apologies if you've been expecting Maharaj here to give it, but I'm very honoured to be able to say something in the glory of Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, and it'd be certainly an honour to say something with your permission. Jai. Today we're going to be reading a sloka from the 11th canto, from the Uddhava Gita actually, chapter 27, text 13. The chapter is entitled The Process of Deity Worship. So, Chaleti Dvi Vidha Pratishta Jiva Mandiram Udvasa Bahane Na Stahab Stirayam Udavachane Chala Chalete Dvividha Pratishta Jiva Mandiram Udasahena Staha Stirayam Udvachane. How's it go? Chalat Chaleti Dvividha Pratishta Jiva Mandiram Udvasa Vahane Nastaha Stirayam Udavane Vachane Stirayam Udavachane. Chala Chaleti Dvividha
Pratishta Jiva Mandiram Udvasa Vahane Nastaha Stirayam Udavachane Chaleti Dvividha
Ladies. Chilati Dividam Pratishta Divajaram. Chat. Chala, movable. Achala, immovable. Iti, thus. Dvividha, of two varieties. Pratishta, the installation. Jiva Mandiram, of the deity, who is the shelter of all living entities. Udvasa, sending away. Havahane, and calling forth. Nastaha, are not done. Styriam, for the permanently established deity. Uddhava, my dear Uddhava. Archane, in his worship. Translation: the deity form of the Lord, who is the shelter of all living entities, can be established in two ways, temporarily or permanently. But a permanent deity, having been called, can never be sent away, my dear Uddhava. Purport: the devotees of the Lord understand themselves to be the Lord's eternal servitors, recognizing the deity to be the Lord himself. They permanently install the deity and engage in perpetual worship. The impersonalists, however, regard the eternal form of the Lord as a temporary manifestation of illusion. In fact, they regard the deity form as a mere stepping stone in their ambitious program to become God. Materialistic persons of whatever stripe consider the Lord to be their order supplier, and they make temporary arrangements for religious ceremonies to achieve temporary material sense gratification. The temporary mode of worship is favoured by those desiring to exploit the personality of Godhead for their personal ends, whereas the loving devotees in Krishna consciousness eternally engage in worship of the personality of Godhead. They install permanent deities meant to be worshipped perpetually. Om Agnyati Mirandasya Jananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmei Shri Gurve Namaha Durgame Padamindasya Skalapati Katimoho Swakripa Yustudanina Shantu Shantar Valambanam. Alright, so this is a really ecstatic chapter. It's called The Process of Deity Worship. It's in the 11th canto. It's from the Uddhava Gita. So Lord Krishna was instructing Uddhava in the process of deity worship. So here is Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, giving Uddhava instructions how to worship him in his deity form. So the purport of that was that Uddhava is there to receive this instruction for the benefit of humanity. So people would also come to that platform where they can understand the ecstasy of their reciprocation with the Lord through the process of deity worship. So when Srila Prabhupada introduced Krishna consciousness to the West, deity worship was very much a part of his agenda, and he personally, not only personally brought Sri Radha Gopinath to Australia, a very first deities in 1971, but he did actually install 4 deities in Australia. So Sri Sri Radha Gopinath were the first one, and then in Melbourne temple he installed Gaur-Nitai deities, the brass ones. I think some of the devotees were there for that one. Was there anybody here? The Pujari was there. We have the Pujari present to help install them. It's a real nice film with Mother Visa and Srila Prabhupada both baiting Sri Sri Gaur-Nitai. It's lovely. And then then small Radha Krishna deities, and then Sri Radha Vallabha deities. So 4 sets of deities. So so the reason for that is that deity worship is very, very important in the West, and we get a clue of this when we chant every day. I don't know how many times a day we chant this. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Prasyata Desatarine. Obeisances to you, I serve the Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who's spreading the message of Lord Chaitanya, delivering countries filled with impersonalism and voidism. The void. Deity worship fills the void. So, of course, deity... It's your mother, isn't it? Oh, that's from the grave. Anybody else connected? Oh, hello, here's another one there. They're all coming out of the grave, right?
Come here, Pop.
Yeah. Oh, you always get a special mention from me if your phone goes off in the temple room. So we, Srila Prabhupada, it's a direct challenge. Deity worship, as I said, there's a void. So deity worship is a direct challenge to fill that void in our impersonalistic society. Here we are introducing a personal God, and the importance this is emphasized so strongly here in the Srimad Bhagavatam, way back from 5,000 years ago. So Srila Prabhupada has taken this tradition of Bhakti Yoga, not only to start off with chanting, dancing and feasting, being happy, chant and be happy, and eat lots of prasadam. I mean, that was all right in the beginning. It was quite funny. We were talking about that like a couple of days ago, eat and chant and eat lots of prasadam, but sometime down the line in the temple there when they started matchless gifts, the devotees were saying, Srila Prabhupada, you don't feed us so much now. He said, oh, that's because you all know about Krishna now. So it's just in the early stages. So Prabhupada gave us this, as soon as we got serious, he gave us this deity worship. And deity worship is a part of this ninefold process of devotional service. It's not only hearing, chanting and remembering, they're the first 3 parts, but there's 9 parts, and they're all ecstatic process of devotional services. I want to recite them. The only way I know how to recite them is when I hear the Bhaja Hunre Mana prayer, the last verse of Bhaja Hunre Mana. So it goes with it, Shravana Kirtana Smarana Vandana Pada Sevana Machare Pujana Sakijana Atma Nivedana Govinda Dasi Abhilasi Re. So in that ninefold processes, how many of the processes are involved with deity worship? Just we have Archana, and then we have offering prayers is sort of, but we have Pujanam, puj the Lord, Sevanam, service to the Lord, and Sakijanam, and then of course Atma Nivedam, surrendering everything. But directly, there's 3 or 4 processes there that are involved with deity worship in our tradition of Bhakti Yoga. So it's deity worship is very important. Of course, deity worship is there since time immemorial. It's a timeless tradition of Vedic culture. We go on our pilgrimages to South India, we see these magnificent temples, ancient temples, no age to them. Just like in South India, Sri Rangam, Tirupati, and Jagannath Puri in Orissa. So no one knows how old the Jagannath temple is. We have stories of King Indradumna worshipping deities many thousand years ago, but then it just appears like that when the temple was, there's temple upon temple being built there. It's a timeless tradition. So within this timeless tradition, there's also the worship of so many different deities, as we see, because in Vedic culture, we know there are so many demigods also. So people, like said in the purport here, who are desirous of material sense gratification may worship other deities such as Kali, Shiva, Ganapati, Saraswati, goddess of learning, and so many other deities that are related to some form of benediction. But also in that worship, there's worship of Lord Vishnu. There's so many Vishnu temples, and of course Sri Radha Krishna is there. But predominantly up to the point when Srila Prabhupada, his predecessor, spiritual master, Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj introduced Krishna consciousness. I heard there was something like 25,000 temples. This is a Namritananda figure here, like big figures, 25, and of those, hardly anyone was a Krishna temple. They were all to do with worship of other deities. So, so for the devotees, Sri Radha Krishna is the standout. Worship of Sri Radha Krishna, that's the standout worship, deity worship that we engage in, and also, simultaneously with worship of Radha Krishna, it's going straight to the source. It's also worship of Sri Sri Gaura-Nitai deities, worship of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Gauranga, because Lord Gauranga is the golden avatar for this age, along with Lord Nityananda and all his associates. And Lord Gauranga is giving us this process of delivery, the understanding of Krishna consciousness. So he's also the most forgiving incarnation of Krishna. So we like to worship him. We worship him for so many reasons, and also because in our worship of Gaura-Nitai we can worship him anywhere in our home or wherever, and our offences are mitigated because he's the deliverer of all fallen souls, and fallen souls are everywhere in this age of Kali Yuga, literally littering the place everywhere. We're all little Jagai, mini Jagai Madais, bigger Jagai Madais, very fallen ones. So it's easy to worship Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, because sometimes with the worship of Radha and Krishna, we have to be really careful that we don't commit so many offences, so we have to have some qualifications. So with Gaura-Nitai deities, the worship of Gaura-Nitai deities, sometimes the pundits challenge the fact that actually Lord Chaitanya is not an incarnation in this age of Kali Yuga. Why? Because most of the Shastras predict that only the Lord appears at only 3 of the yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara Yuga, in his different coloured incarnations. So they say there's no record of Lord Chaitanya being present as incarnation, Supreme Person of Godhead in this age of Kali Yuga. But in the Taittiriya Upanishad, it clearly states the famous sloka, Krishna Varnam Tvisa Krishnam Sangapangastra Parashadam Yajanti Sankirtanam Praye. Oh, Yagnati Sankirtanam Praye Yajanti Hi Sumedasa. That in the age of Kali, intelligent persons that will perform congregational chanting, worship of the incarnation Supreme Personality of Godhead, who confidentially sings, continually sings the names of Lord Krishna, not confidentially, broadly spreads the chanting of the glory of the holy name of Krishna. And although his complexion is not blackish, as was with Krishna, but golden, he is Krishna himself, accompanied by his associates and companions. A lot of people misunderstand the fact that Lord Chaitanya did come, because he came, it says a hidden incarnation. Why was he hidden? Because he came as a devotee. Normally when the Lord comes as an incarnation, he comes as a Supreme Personality of Godhead. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to show the example of a devotee, and how a devotee can attain that highest love and perfection in his life, in his association with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So those people who don't fully comprehend this, or those who don't comprehend the nature of the soul, so once again we go back to the Nirvisesa Shunyavadi, because that apparently in this day and age, modern day and age, is very difficult to understand the difference between body and soul. It's like basic maths for us, 1 and 1 equals 2 for those who are on the path of spiritual love, spiritual life. But to those who don't comprehend it, then they think that deity worship is a lot of different things, like it's superstitious, that it's like it's also like maybe for less advanced people who are sentimental and they want to engage in that type of activity. Or some people think, like it's said in the purport here, that that they think they're worshipping themselves in the form of God. I know once when I came as a bhakta, really earlier on, I had this associate that I knew of who was from Karanda, and he was like the ultimate hippie. His name was just Peter Sagittarius, just to highlight his... And he brought his father to the altar, and I was just there chanting my japa. It was late at night. He said, "Oh man, pay obeisances to your higher self." I thought, you know, what's he mean by that? What do you do when somebody does that in the temple? So this is the concept that people have, that and other people think that we made this up, this whole process. Where did you get it from? Because people have no knowledge of history or whatever. They come and they see the deities and they think, why are you guys doing this? So this is why we have the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have Uddhava, that he gave us this process 5,000 years ago. This is how long this process has been going, and so we are following exactly as is prescribed in the scriptures, and worshipping that image of the Lord to attain a certain. It's a scientific. It's a formula to attain certain. To attain realization of ourselves in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And throughout history, it's been given that so many great saints, powerful personalities, all worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The founder of our movement, Madhvacharya, who's incarnation of Vayu, he was sitting by the banks of the shore when this boat crashed on the waves of the ocean, and then some chandana, sandalwood, came floating to the shore, and in that there was this beautiful Baal deity, Baal deity. Baal deity is Krishna in his childhood form. So he began to worship that with great awe and reverence, even though he was so famous. He was the most knowledgeable. He's actually one of the founders of our Sampradaya, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. And in Ramanuja, he also worshipped his deity. And we go down, we had the Chaitya Guru of Lord Chaitanya Madhavendra Puri. That Madhavendra Puri was a self-realised soul of the highest order, that he was knowledgeable in all aspects of the Shastra, and he was such an exalted devotee that he was seeing Lord Krishna everywhere, that sometimes when he looked up and he saw a blue cloud, he'd faint in ecstasy because he thought he was seeing Krishna. At other times, he'd go in the deepest profound state of samadhi just if he saw a dark tree or a cow or like anything that reminded him of Krishna, he would be in ecstasy, so permanently. But then when he found his Gopal deity, he would worship his Gopal deity very, very astutely with awe and reverence and great attention. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he worshipped the Vishnu deity that was there in his parents' place, the Hoksajam Vishnu. And of course, when he took sannyasi, he toured all the temples of South India, and he went and visited all the deities, and with great ecstasy glorified those deities. And when he settled in Jagannath Puri to worship Lord Jagannath, who was the divine manifestation of the pure love exhibited by Radharani, it was so intense, that relationship between Lord Jagannath that you can only watch from a distance. So where did he see him from? The Guru the Stamba. He'd be watching from the Guru the Stamba. At one point in time, he was watching with such intensity, and it was a crowded place, and this lady wanted to get this Mataji, a lady, wanted to get a better look, so she climbed up on his shoulders to get a better look at Lord Jagannath. Now, can you imagine that film that we saw yesterday of that brahmachari engaged in worshipping Lord Krishna, and all the brahmanas, all the injunctions of the brahmanas, don't stand in my shadow and don't come to my house, don't eat off my plates, this and that. Now, can you imagine when this lady crawls, climbs upon the shoulders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? All the devotees are in complete shock. Get down, get down. Lord Chaitanya, no, she's got a bigger desire than I have to see the Lord. Let her stay. So sometimes we experience that when we go to Mayapur. You know, we see Gaur-Purnim, or we go there for Krishna's appearance day, that the place is just completely crowded out, and that people will do anything to get in to see the Lord. So nobody's safe. So Srila Prabhupada, he brought the deities, Shri Radha Gopinath, to Australia, and so at that point in time, there was sort of like there was religion. There was predominant religions. The place was a lot more religious than it is now. Things have changed, right? Times have changed. So at that point in time, still we had the Christians. They were very strong. And of course, when we started to introduce Krishna and deity worship, they considered it to be idol worship. And they would consider us followers of the devil or whatever, so we got the resistance there. Islamic, which wasn't very strong, but Islamic faith, they have no pictures or no statues. Right? Judaism is similar. There is no statues of the Lord. And so therefore they're not sure what God looks like or what his name is. I mean, Allah is just a description of God, but it's, they're not quite sure about the details of God, whether he's actually even a person. So one time when Srila Prabhupada came to Melbourne in 1974, he mentioned that if your religion can't tell you what God looks like or what His name is, come to us. We'll tell you what God looks like, what His name is, and where He lives. Come and see us. So the general public now, many years down the line, religion has even faded more, and they don't believe much at all, really. There's a despondency in this modern society, and it's sort of like full of AIDS. It's abstract, art, architecture, it's automated, everything's machine, agnostic, atheistic, and apathetic, right? Towards there's no compassion. The compassion is actually fading. There's no compassion towards animals or human beings. So Srila Prabhupada gave us this deity to challenge all these notions. So what is the basic fault? Is that there's no knowledge of the soul. There is no connection. So therefore the deities are here to make a connection, and they stand out. They're very confronting. So we experience where we are at the farm that, chanting is one thing, but when people see a personal deity, they find it really challenging because of their upbringing, the way the society is conditioning people to believe. So as in Uddhava Gita, Krishna gave Uddhava this knowledge, and so Lord Chaitanya also gave Rupa Goswami knowledge on how to approach Krishna through transcendental divine service, and Rupa Goswami specifically delineated this in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is the nectar of devotion. So how ecstatic is the nectar of devotion is one of the books that we read right in the beginning of our devotional service. So with deity worship, as said in the purport here, normally, traditionally, according to Vedic injunctions, deities are installed with great pomp, with ceremony, yajnas, processions, and usually they're put in solid temples made of stone or brick, and mantras are performed by expert pujaris, and there is great celebration in the whole of the city or town, whatever. So when Srila Prabhupada came and installed the deities, we had a shop front in Paddington. We went and had a look at that shop front. It's quite small, quite flimsy, just glass window. And very small shop facing a busy street with passing traffic and nobody actually paying people into devotees and so they can worship you adequately. Of course, in 10 months' time, when he came back to Australia, came back to Glebe, he was so delighted because they'd moved to a new temple. It was a bigger temple, and Radha Gopinath were being worshipped very nicely by the devotees, so he's very, very pleased. And he considered that Radha Gopinath were looking after the devotees. So Radha Gopinath are already well travelled because this is the second time they come to Australia. We spoke about that a couple of days ago, that earlier on a particular person by the name of Mr. Singh, he thought that this was wonderful to establish Krishna consciousness in Australia, so he said, I'll bring some deities. So he had some deities made in Bombay, and he sent them to the devotees in Bondo, but they'd gone. So therefore they came back to Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada saw the deities, accepted them graciously, and he put them in the pandal. I put them on the pandal in Bombay, where they had a huge pandal with so many thousands of people coming, and they come to see the deities, of course, deities of Radha and Krishna. So even the worship of Radha Krishna is something new for those people in India, even though they seen so many deities, still there's not so many Radha Krishna deities. So that was the attraction, and the white people were the attraction also. That was the early devotees, all the glorious names, Shyama Sundara and Guru Das and Mukunda Maharaj, and of course our eternal friend here, Banu Maharaj, was there too. For that one he was Bhakta Bruce. So he was at that festival also. At that festival also there was a Swedish devotee who was married by Srila Prabhupada to an Australian devotee, and her name was Padmavati Das. So it was decided that Bhagavan, he got initiated, they got married and initiated at the same time. So it was decided Bhagavan would help Srila Prabhupada bring the deities to Australia. So he was bringing them back to Australia. So Bali Madan, they got to, had a program in Singapore and they were going to go to Indonesia, but something went wrong, so they came to Australia early. So Bali Madan had Krishna in his on his lap, and Bhagavan was carrying Srimati Radharani. But as was stated before, that Bhagavan didn't have a visa. So the devotees, when they saw Srila Prabhupada land at the airport, he was cleared by customs, but he was still standing there, very grave. They were looking through. It's amazing, isn't it, at the airport, that you can get so close that you can see some people on the other side of the barrier. You can't see a thing. Right? So they were looking through the curtain, the single Srila Prabhupada, but he was waiting. And the person who put Prabhupada through rejected Bhagavan because he didn't have a visa, and he sent him back to the customs office. And so he was getting grilled. Why are you here? How come you don't have a visa? And he's trying to explain, well, I didn't know it was coming. And he said, I've married an Australian lady. He said, well, show me your marriage certificate then if you married this Australian lady. He said, well, I didn't get one because the marriage was conducted by a spiritual master. It was a fire sacrifice. And he showed him the photo of him getting married at the fire sacrifice, and the customs official was looking at Prabhupada. Somehow or other he got mesmerised by Prabhupada's aura, and he looked at Bhagavan and he got the stamp and he put indefinite stay on his passport, right? And so Bhagavan took the passport back to the customs guy and sent him back there, and he couldn't believe it, that he got this stamp, indefinite stay. It was like incredulous, right? So then that's how Radha Gopinath came to Australia. But at that point in time, there was no name they hadn't been named, so Srila Prabhupada named them Sri Radha Gopinath at that ceremony. So I want to talk about the original Sri Radha Gopinath deities, because there's some similarities. It's impossible to preempt the mind of a spiritual master, but maybe if we understand a little bit about the original Sri Radha Gopinath, we can fully comprehend potencies of the deities. So 5,000, we're going back 5,000 years ago again, back to the time where Krishna just left the planet, and and the ruler of Mathura at that point in time was Rajanaba. Please get it. Bhagavat, you all right? You all right? Okay. I'm not using this. Give it to Bhagavat. Okay. So it was Rajanaba. He was like the local king. And the king of whole Bharatvarsha at that point in time was Maharaj Parikshit. So Maharaj Parikshit actually went to Mathura to see King Rajanaba, and he wanted to visit Vrindavan, see Vrindavan and Krishna's pastime. So when they went to Vrindavan, it was deserted. It was just the place. there was nobody living there. The trees and the bushes, they looked like they were wasted away. The whole place was desolate, and because Rajanabha, he was Krishna's great-grandson, so they were both devastated that Vrindavan had become so like a wasteland. So King Parikshit instructed Rajanabha to reinstate Vrindavan to as much as he could to its former glorious, wonderful land. So, of course, then they built villages and they got people to go there and start farming the land. He wanted to make some deities of Krishna, but at that point in time, Krishna had been gone for a certain point in time, and they didn't quite know what Krishna's features were like. So there was only one person left on the planet that actually knew what Krishna looked like, because she'd seen him before, and that was Uttara, right? The mother of Abhimanyu and the father of King Parikshit. So they called Uttara, and she helped supervise the making of the deities, and so 3 sets of deities got made. This is 5,000 years ago, right? So we had the Radha Govinda deity, whose lotus face resembled so much Krishna, and then we had the Radha Gopinath, and it said that Radha Gopinath's broad shoulders and chest was like Krishna's, and then we had Madana Mohan deity, who had very strong shapely legs like Krishna. So Radha Gopinath deity was established in worship. The worship of Radha Gopinath was established in Vrindavan 5,000 years ago, but in the course of time over the next 4,000 years, that worship got lost. So then Radha Gopinath was covered over until there was a big flood just after Lord Chaitanya visited, after Goswamis were there. And during that flood, Shri Radha Gopinath, they were uncovered, and partially uncovered, and then a disciple by the name of Paramananda Puri, a disciple of Gadadhar Pandit, found those deities and re-established the worship of Radha Gopinath deities. In that way, all the other 2 deities also got, the worship was revived. We know with Madana Mohan deities, they were worshipped by Sanatana Goswami. But soon after that, there was that threat of the Mughal invasion, so those deities, they were sent to Jaipur, and they're still worshipped in Jaipur to this very day. So it's amazing to know that Jaipur means the city of victory. Why is it the city of victory? Because the worship of the deities there and the Mughal invaders couldn't overcome Jaipur. So all the deities are there, the city of victory. People don't know that. They visit there for the sandstone rocks, but the reason why it is Jaipur is because the deities are there. Isn't it? So,
The city was actually built for them.
Yes, totally. And it had high walls, so it had a record of how the Mughal invaders were chasing one pair of deities, and they opened the gates and then they shut the gates, and there was nothing they could do. So it was very, so the Lord was protected. Very powerful king. So, so in Australia, so there was a common denominator there that our Radha Gopinath deities here, they also travelled a lot. So, so therefore, Srila Prabhupada, for either that reason or whatever reason it was, he called our deities Radha Gopinath deities. So this is in the Radha Gopinath, very powerful name. So our deities also travel a lot, so we have a record. So we were talking about how they were established in Paddington, and then 10 months later Srila Prabhupada came and saw him in Glebe. I think he came twice and saw him in the Glebe temple from memory, yes? Yeah, that's right. And from then they had this rather amazing journey. I've got a record of it here in this magazine that they went from Glebe. They went to Bellevue Hill, then they went to Des Moines. After Des Moines, short period of time, they went, Double Bay, that was there. Then Bellevue Hill, then Des Moines. And then that was a very short stay. And then they came to Alexandria. So I did personally see him in Alexandria. Were you still there in Alexandria at that point in time? You were. That was a short stay there, and they moved to Surrey Hills. So Surrey Hills was there for nearly 3 years, and a lot of us devotees have had some pastimes with the deities in Surrey Hills. We're sort of quite affectionate. The Surrey Hills Temple, we visited it the other day. There was a nice brick establishment. It was sort of quaint. It wasn't a big temple room, but then it had that fiery picture of Lord Nrsimhadev with Radhikasipu's blood on his mouth, tearing out his intestines and putting them around his neck as a garland right there on the wall as he came in. And the devotees used to use the word nice at that point in time, so we used to say it was a nice picture. So, so we had that, and then it was on the first floor. If you go to the building, you see that there was sort of like a reception room. Well, it was not really a reception room. People walked in and had prasadam on the ground floor, and then the first floor was the temple room. And somehow or other, it was only meant to be for a few devotees because, the devotees were there. The Kola River wasn't established then, but there was quite a number of devotees there because it was quite an ecstatic place to be at, Radha Gopinath's mercy. And we used to have these big kirtans, so running up from one end to another and running back again. We had some heavy guys too, and a lot of jumping up. Gyana Samudra sort of used to shake the floor a bit, a few other people. So then the floor started to give way. So then